All right, so looks like everyone who's going to join has joined, so we'll get started. Welcome everybody to exploring the tax law certification exam. Today, as you may be aware, there's no CLE credit, and it's really meant to provide you with an overview of the exam and an opportunity for you to ask questions. So please, any questions you have, write them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. We are going to have a CLE course on September 25th, and that's going to be on AI ethics and the practice of law. So make sure to join us then. All right, so today, Mitchell Goldberg is going to be speaking. He is a board certified specialist in tax law by the Florida Bar. His practice concentrates in the areas of federal income, partnership, corporate, international, and transfer taxations, and related business transactional matters. He advises businesses and individuals on choice of entity and structuring, analyzing, and drafting sophisticated business transactions to provide tax-efficient structures that maximize value. So without further ado, Mitch, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Bruna, and thanks everyone for having me. So we're sitting here, we're going to talk about the tax certification exam. Personally, I got my tax certification in 2017 and got my recertification last year. So obviously I've been through the process, I've taken the exam, I've gone through the application process. I currently sit on the Florida Bar Tax Certification Committee with about 10 or so other tax lawyers in the state. I think we'll talk about the nuts and bolts of the exam and the application process and all that, but I wanted to start off and talk about who is this intended for? Who's the intended audience, applicant, examinee? And I think a good way to describe it is who is this not necessarily intended for? And what the exam is not intended to do is to test that 30-year practitioner to see if he or she has achieved the pinnacle of tax knowledge and can quote chapter and verse of the Internal Revenue Code and the Treasury regulations. And I say that to mean this exam is meant to test that senior associate, junior partner, the lawyer who just struck out on his or her own to start their own firm. That lawyer who's rounding the corner from young lawyer to capable attorney, so to speak, and to test the fundamentals of tax law and to test a basic understanding. And I almost equate it to similar to the bar exam, where when you were studying for the bar, you weren't expected to know every nuance of every law, but to have a fundamental understanding of the law. And similarly here, we're not looking to test when we write the exam, we're not looking to test to see if you know the intricacies of 704B allocation rules, or if you know the intricacies of all the foreign tax credit rules. We want to know and write the exam in a way so that to give the examinee the opportunity to convey to us, and when I say us, I mean the tax certification committee, that he or she has a fundamental understanding of the tax laws, and we're not writing it as a way to get any gotchas or to test these super esoteric things that unless you're going way deep down the rabbit hole, you would never know. So that's really what the intent of the exam is. And sometimes, and I wanted to say this because I know I've spoken to a lot of people before, and there might be a little bit misconception on how the exam is structured and how it's geared and who it's intended for. So I wanted to kind of lay that as the foundation and the background. So let's next talk about qualifications. And all of this is on the website. There's a tax certification page on the Florida Bar website. So I'm pulling all of this from there. So if you miss something or you want to see it in writing, you can just go onto the website and see it. So qualifications, an individual has to have been practicing for at least 5 years or 4 years plus a tax LLM, he or she had to have had at least 500 hours or more of tax practice during the last 3 years, and during the last 3 years has had enrolled in and taken at least 90 hours of tax CLE credits. In addition, there is a peer review process where you have to give referrals who can opine on your abilities as a lawyer and your qualities as a person. And these are confidential. I personally have been asked to peer review other tax attorneys in the state, and it is a confidential questionnaire that you fill out truthfully and send back, and the Florida bar is not supposed to disclose what a reference says about the applicant. And I remember when I was doing the process, one of the things that was a little bit of a sticking point for me was finding good reference points, because it may be the case with a lot of you on this call is you're a planner and let me back up. Those references have to be other lawyers, and it can't be a lawyer in your firm, and it can't be a lawyer that you're related to. So I remember when I was going through the process, that was something that I was kind of worried about, because as I'm sure is the case with a lot of the people on this call, if you're a planner, you're not necessarily dealing with an opposing counsel. It's just you and your client. It's just you and the CPA or the wealth advisor, and there isn't another lawyer there necessarily weighing in on your substantive abilities as a tax attorney. So what I found as a good resource to build those reference points was the tax section. And through my involvement in the tax section and being on committees, speaking engagements, attending meetings, having substantive tax discussions with my colleagues in the section, I built relationships through the tax section that then I leveraged as references when I then ultimately went and did my application for tax certification. I put down a few people that I met and built relationships with through the tax section. So if you're someone who maybe that's been a hang up for you because you don't deal with opposing counsels and the like, the tax section could be a good place to start building those relationships. So we talked about that, and then there's the written exam. And to qualify to sit for the exam, the application is between July 1st and August 31st of each year. And then the exam is the following March. So right now, the application period is closed to be able to sit for the March 2025 exam. And that's on March 14th, 2015. So that means on July 1, 2025, the application process will open up to sit for the March 2026 exam. So that if you missed the window for the 2025 exam, you got a lot of time to start getting your ducks in a row, whether it's CLE requirements, number of hours worked, etc., to be in a position to submit an application on July 1, 2025 for the 2026 exam. And one thing to note with the peer review process and the application, let me rephrase that. One thing to note with the application is you have to disclose if there's been any bad things that's happened in the course of your practice, if there's been a bar complaint or lawsuits filed that question your ability as an attorney, as a practitioner. And the one thing I will say is make a full disclosure, including what was the resolution of that issue, because having sat on the committee and reviewing these, we actually review these applications, And if there was a bar complaint, if there was a lawsuit filed, if there were allegations questioning, and you disclose that, we want to know, A, give us more details, and what was the resolution of it? Don't just say there was an issue without giving the full disclosure, so to speak, because sometimes it is material, but it wouldn't be the first instance in the history of the legal practice where a client was upset for no fault of your own and filed a complaint, and that complaint got dismissed and didn't have any merit. And if that's the case, we want to know that. So please, when you're filling out your application and making the disclosure, give a full disclosure and include any resolutions, any bar documents, any court filings that evidence how that was ultimately resolved, so we can get the full picture and make an informed decision on how to evaluate that situation. So turning to the actual structure of the exam. Again, exam is not meant to drill down on super esoteric issues. It's meant to test to make sure you, as the examinee, have a fundamental understanding of the tax laws. Again, all this is on the on the Florida Bar website tax certification page also. The exam has 2 choice of entity questions and 8 short essay questions. The 2 choice of entity questions are worth 60 points each, and each short essay question is worth 15 points each. And to pass the exam, you need to have a 70%, get 70% of the points. So as you can see, the choice of entity long essay exams, 60 points each, make up the lion's share of the exam and your points. And what those essays are really intended to do is to test your ability to understand the difference between C corps, S corps, and partnerships, including how entities are taxed at the entity level, how they're taxed on formation, how they're taxed on dissolution and liquidation, how they're taxed when equity interests are transferred, and all those things that just come up if you're a tax practitioner and you're advising clients on what is the consequence if I'm an S corp, what's the consequence if I'm a C corp, what's the consequence if I'm a partnership. And then the other areas that are addressed, and most of these are addressed in the short answer essays, is transfer tax, estate gift, generation, skipping transfer taxation, international tax, practice and procedure, practicing before the IRS and Department of Revenue, including penalties, audits, appeals, collections, statute of limitations, all those types of issues, individual income tax issues, tax exempt orgs, income tax of estates and trusts, Florida state tax, doc stamps, sales and use tax, and the like. And then we also will throw in some ethics questions as well. So you can see there's a broad breadth of subject matter there. Again, not meant to be a gotcha and test really esoteric stuff, but to make sure you as the examinee have a fundamental grasp of spotting the issues like a law school exam. And what I would say is, obviously you need to be smart and competent in choice of entity and the like, but think about how to prepare for the exam in light of the CLE requirements as well. You need those 90 CLEs. Maybe you don't do a whole lot of international tax, right? Well, maybe attend the CLE every year. The Florida Bar tax section and the FICPA has their international tax boot camp every January down in Miami as part of the ITC. Maybe you don't attend the full ITC, but you attend the boot camp to get that fundamental crash course on international tax. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone in the sense you get that substantive crash course, and you're also getting CLEs towards your 90 CLE requirement to qualify to sit for the exam. And that goes really for any substantive tax area where maybe you're not doing it day in and day out and you need to bone up on it, whether it's estate and gift tax, IRS practice and procedure, international tax, or the like. Try to think of those things as you're also looking at CLEs to take to get your 90 credits and kill two birds with one stone in that respect. What the other thing I'll say is don't procrastinate. Just like I hope you didn't procrastinate when you studied for the bar exam and you took time and took your Barbary or Kaplan or whatever course it was. Don't procrastinate on this either. You know, if you're a partnership tax guy that all you do is partnership tax day in and day out, you probably don't need to study for partnership tax, but I wouldn't wait until the week of or the month before to start boning up on your international and your estate and gift tax. Plan ahead, plan it out. As I said, we're in September of 2024 right now. The window's closed to sit for the 2025 exam. You got all the way until July 1, 2025 before the application window opens for the 2026 exam. So there's a long runway to start getting your ducks in order to be in a good position to sit and be comfortable and confident when you sit for that 2026 exam. That's, you know, I think we said in the materials about 30 minutes. Kind of envisioned half going through the exam and the process and what to expect, and the other half for any questions there may be. And you know, if I can answer them, I'll answer them to the best I can.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. We do have one question so far, and it's how do you substantiate the 500-hour requirement? And can attorneys who work in accounting firms be certified?
So we're on the honor system. You'll see in the application process, there's a box you check where you have to certify that you meet the 500-hour requirement. We're not looking at the certification committee. We're not going to look at your billables. We're not going to look at the bills you send out to clients to make sure that you're billing this amount of hours. It's the honor system. And the other question was lawyers at accounting firms, right?
Yes.
I got to double check, but I think if they're in good standing with the Florida bar, I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, great. Oh, one more question. Are you going to have a program to help with preparation for the exam?
Oh, great question. And thank you. I forgot to mention that. We don't have a CLE per se geared towards the exam. However, every month the tax section puts on a free CLE, phone CLE or Zoom CLE now, for its membership. And all of those are available online. A lot of them will touch on or be geared towards substantive issues. I know a couple weeks back, I think Adam Smith did a 1-hour CLE on partnership tax, and that's available online to look at. And there's a whole catalog that's accessible that can be a resource. But no, we don't have one specifically geared towards the certification exam.
And let me speak to that a little bit. I'm Dana Apfelbaum, the co-chair of the Education Committee. We are gearing and intentionally making several of our free tax Zoom CLEs geared towards certification topics, and we will work towards letting you know which ones those are that cover certification topics to assist you in preparation for the exam. Because tax law certification is such a niche area, and Mitch, I don't think you covered how many people normally sit for the exam or any of that, but you know, it is a niche area, and in a given year, I don't think I'm wrong to say that, you know, there might be 5 to 10 practitioners taking the exam in any given year. It's been difficult for the section to, efficiently put on a full program like what Reptile does for wills, trusts, and estates, because it is a much broader area with more people taking the exam. But we are trying to make the things available so that you'll have materials to assist you without doing a dedicated day-long, 2-day-long presentation. And in many ways, that should be more convenient, since they'll be available to you, piecemeal for what you need to do and what you might need to study up on more specifically.
Yeah, and thanks, Dana, and I can say for the 2024 exam, we had 3 examinees. I think the year before that, we didn't even have anyone submit an application to take the exam. So I think I heard we have about 40 attendees on this Zoom call. That's very encouraging. And I hope this has helped, and I hope to see an uptick in applicants and examinees, because it's a great thing. And were there other questions, Bruna?
Yeah, so we just got 2 more questions.
Okay,
One is,
great.
how many references are required?
I think it's, and the specifics are all on the tax section website. I want to say 5. Plus 2 or 3 additional references that can be non-attorneys, such as CPAs.
Okay, and then the last question is, how many people pass the exam every year?
Sure. So I can tell you, for the 2024 exam, we had 3 examinees, 2 of them passed. So we had a 66% pass rate last year. I don't believe no one took the exam in 2023, and I don't have the historical numbers for prior years at my fingertips.
Historical numbers, I know, have been a little bit difficult in the years post-COVID, just because it's been kind of a different world, and we're a couple years post-COVID, but it may be a bit skewing in the years that are COVID and post-COVID, just due to the availability of CLE.
Right.
I know that
Right.
many of the certification areas experienced a downtick in people taking the certification exams because of the CLE requirements.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for people to get as much CLE as they needed to be able to qualify to take the exam without being able to go and sit. So we are probably last year and maybe the year before in our first cycles where things are a bit more normal. But tax law is a niche area. It is always going to have a slightly lower taker rate than some other areas, because as a section and as a practice area, we are smaller than many of the other practice areas.
Yeah, a good point, Dan, and little insider baseball from the tax committee also. We had the exact same conversations internally when we saw the dip in examinees, and we chalked it up a lot to the 90-hour CLE requirement and the drop off of that, and the availability of resources during COVID. Whether that is in fact true or not, who knows? But that we had the same conversation within the committee.
But I think the overall message, none of this should discourage any of you from taking the exam. In fact, I'd encourage all of you to take the exam and to study and to take it, because it is quite worthwhile, the certification process. And I think, we're working to make the information on tax certification more accessible, because I think it has been difficult in the past for people, to qualify and understand with some of the COVID requirements and just some of the changes in exam structure. So we want to make that accessible to you. If there are additional questions, we certainly welcome them. And if you have additional questions following this, we'll certainly make ourselves available and get them connected to the certification committee so that those questions can be answered, and you guys can, work towards certification if that is your goal. We want to aim as a section to provide this service to our members and bridge that gap for you. So please let us know if there's any way as a tax section that we can assist you in that.
Yeah, and it looks like another question came in, Bruna.
Yeah, are there any past exams available online to assist with studying?
So again, if you go to the tax certification exam website on the Florida Bar's website, there are sample exam questions, but the past exams themselves are not available. But there are sample questions online at the tax certification website that are very similar to the structure and the way the exam's written and how the questions are asked.
Okay, and does the answer have to include specific code sections? I am reviewing the sample questions on the website.
If you can, great. You're allowed to bring your code and regs. At least when I took the exam back in 2017, you were allowed to bring the code and regs into the exam with you, which I think is still the case. And yeah, you don't have to, but if you want to try and get the most points you can, and demonstrate that fundamental understanding, putting code sections in doesn't hurt.
Great. Any other questions? Yes. Why aren't the prior exams available?
I don't have a good answer per se. I think Dana's coming in. Maybe she knows.
My understanding from general certification, because it's not just for tax law certification that the past exams are not available, it is across the board that they do not make complete exams from the past still available. I believe the reasoning for that is that they preserve some of the content to be able to utilize it again, and they are making a limited selection available for preparation purposes, but it is possible that some questions from past exams could be reused.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great point, Dana. And I know, yeah, when we're writing the exam, we will pull from prior exams to structure questions and test tax knowledge and concepts. So that's a good answer.
And every year in the certification process, the certification exam is reviewed by practitioners who have taken the exam before, correct, Mitch?
Yeah, it's reviewed by the tax certification committee, which is comprised of board certified tax lawyers throughout the state.
And that's to ensure that none of the questions on the exam will be unduly misleading, or that the answers that we're giving are correct, and that it is a reasonable exam to give to show somebody's certification in the topic.
Okay, any other questions?
Going once, going twice. Well,
Can you provide more sample questions on the website?
Unfortunately, I don't think we can. This comes down from the big bar on what can and cannot be posted on the website. Dan, if I'm wrong, kick me under the table, but that's my understanding.
No, I believe it is regulated and limited, and in any certification area, there is a limited number of sample questions that are provided. I don't think that they'll allow tax law to deviate from that, unfortunately.
Yeah, the one thing I will say though is if you are practicing tax law and you're doing it day in and day out in your career, and you have the 500 hours and you're doing those things, the fact patterns you're going to see are not going to be something you probably haven't. It's probably not going to be something you haven't seen before. Obviously, if you don't do international tax, that, you know, that's maybe somewhere you have to bone up a bit, but we're not writing fact patterns that are completely out of left field and meant to hide anything or do a gotcha. They're fact patterns that we've seen in our practice and we see day in and day out, and it shouldn't be shouldn't be anything as a surprise or something completely, oh, you know, I would never see anything like this in my practice. Why would they make some crazy fact pattern?
Okay, we have 2 more questions and
Sure.
then maybe that's so. First question, during the July 4th annual conference, can you provide a seminar on the nitty-gritty for potential test takers?
I'm not sure what nitty-gritty means, or what's intended. You know, as Dana said, we and the tax section are going to be putting forth future lunch tax Zoom CLEs that are free for the membership that are geared towards the subject matter that's tested on the certification exam. I know historically the July 4th conference, we have the Ullman Year in Review. That is the CLE that's offered, where it's a summary of the what's happened in the tax world over the last year. Dana, do you have anything else to add there?
I think the question might be aimed more towards whether we can provide something like this rather than a substantive CLE, and more like an informational session like this. If we are looking more at an informational session, I think that would be entirely possible for us to provide at Amelia Island, which is the July 4th annual conference that the tax section hosts. That's our annual organizational meeting. I think it would be entirely possible to incorporate a certification discussion much like this to review with the folks who attend that meeting. I think something substantive, that's not going to be the place for it because of how much other information needs to get packed into that meeting and how much would need to be covered. But we can absolutely look to provide another informational session at the July 4th meeting. That's all I'd add. And then there's another question here below that I'm reading. Can you talk about recertification, Mitch?
Yeah, so recertification, you don't have to take an exam. So that's the nice thing. Recertification is, I think when I did recertification, it's just resubmitting an application to make sure nothing bad has happened. There no malpractice, no lawsuits, nothing like that during the last 5 years. And I may have had to submit a couple of references as well, but it's a much less involved process than the initial application, particularly because there's no exam. You don't have to take another exam to recertify.
Right, and of course the CLE hours that you have to maintain.
Yeah, right.
So I believe it runs on a 5-year cycle that
Yes.
you are required to maintain, what is it, 125 hours? Is that the same, Mitch? I believe it's 125
I'll admit
hours.
I didn't review the recertification requirements in advance of this. I was just focusing on the initial exam and application.
Yes, and Enrique, we can certainly get you the information on that, but you can think of it as essentially a reapplication process without the exam, filling out the application again that says, I still practice in this area. I've done my CLE. Here are my references, and here's an ethical update on my practice.
Okay, great. So we're past the 30-minute mark.
All right. Well, I think we got another question in
Yes, so it
from an
says the
anonymous.
free CLEs do not cover all the topics tested. Some of us do not practice in all the areas of taxation. In my case, I would really like to know what can be tested on employment taxation, for instance. I think that a CLE program to cover the topics would help.
If anyone has any specific areas that they would like to be covered in a phone or a Zoom CLE, I'm sorry, please do send me an email, and, you know, myself and the co-director of education will certainly look to make sure that topics that are frequently requested to be covered, that we have an eye towards covering those topics, and getting you guys the information we need, or you need rather.
Yeah, and we, I mean, for this particular question, we have touched on employment tax issues on prior exams.
More questions? Well, okay, if any other questions come up in the future, feel free to reach out to the tax section. And as Dana said, we'll do our best to get back to you and answer all your questions. So yeah.
I hope this was informational for everyone. I hope you got a better understanding of what the exam consists of, what the application consists of, and what to expect, and really what we as the tax certification committee who write the exams and who review the applicants and review and grade the exams, what we're looking for when we write it and how we grade it. So again, please, as Dana said, any questions, feel free to email me or call me. Happy to talk further. And with that, I'm done. That's it.
Great.
Thank you
So
all for
thank you
coming.
very much. Thank you, Mish, for your insights. Good luck to everyone here. And just a reminder that on September 25th, we're going to have a CLE class on AI ethics and the practice of law. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the week, guys.